The Victorian era lasted from 1837 to 1901. It witnessed huge social and scientific change, and some of this change was just outright bizarre. Here are 10 bizarre Victorian things. In February 1855, southern England had a lot of snowfall. After a night of heavy snow, a trail of footprints was discovered in the countryside. They were not human footprints, or those of any known animal. They appeared to have been made by a cloven hoof in single-file steps, which led them to be known as the Devil's Footprints. Many people genuinely thought they were the Devil's footprints, and that Satan himself was in England that night. The Devil's footprints stretched on for at least 40 miles and even appeared on rooftops. There were all kinds of crazy theories on what caused them. My favourite is that a kangaroo escaped from a local zoo. Despite the appealing nature of this theory, the Devil's footprints remain a mystery. In Victorian times, it was common for two men to duel to the death. Traditionally, the man challenged to the duel had the choice of what weapons were used and where it took place. Usually they'd pick either swords or pistols, but every now and then they would be much more creative. In 1878, a Dutchman was challenged to a duel, and for some reason he wanted it to happen in the sky. Both men ascended into the sky with their hot air balloons ready to do battle. They were each given a pistol and were allowed to shoot at their opponent until one of them was dead. The duel made international news after the Dutchman killed his opponent. The whole thing took place in Guyana, which is weird because both men were European. The Victorians witnessed huge leaps in photographic technology, and for some reason this caused the most creepy trend ever. Post-mortem photography was the popular act of taking photos of dead bodies. Usually taken just after death, they were considered a completely normal aspect of Victorian life. The corpses were usually posed as if they were still alive, and sometimes people would even pose with them in photos. A creepy aspect of the trend was the frequent post-mortem photos featuring children. This can be explained by the high Victorian infant mortality rate. The trend even encroached into the 1900s, with some still being taken after the Second World War. In 1858, there was a bizarre event known as the Great Stink. This was a time when human and industrial waste was still being dumped in the River Thames. The dumping caused not only several outbreaks of deadly diseases, but also a horrendous smell to emit from the river, hence the name the Great Stink. This made life difficult for politicians as they worked right next to the Thames, and at one point they even had to close Parliament due to the stench. Local newspapers personified the problem as a character called Dirty Father Thames. One sketch showed Father Thames interacting with the scientist Michael Faraday. The sketch was a reflection of the current climate, as the stink forced the government to construct London's sewer system. The sewers cost £6.5 million and used over 300 million bricks. The Victorians were a bit more simple than us today, so they were prone to being tricked. Any experienced magician could fool them into believing the paranormal. They were big on sideshows, and no sideshow was complete without a trick horse. A trick horse was a horse who supposedly had unusually high intellect. Some trick horses were said to be as intelligent as humans, and some were said to have psychic abilities. Beautiful Jim Key was a popular trick horse in America. People would travel great distances to see him perform advanced arithmetic and recite Bible passages. I find it hard to believe a horse could speak, but Beautiful Jim Key became a well-known celebrity. There was also a German trick horse called Clever Hans. His owner claimed he could read, write, understand German and tell the time. So many were taken in by this horse that the German Board of Education set out to investigate it. After testing the animal, they concluded it was just a regular dumb horse. Victorian newspapers weren't very good at deciding which stories were genuinely newsworthy. The outcome of this was a variety of unusual headlines. For example, when a live bull ran into a china shop in 1899. In July 1870, a headline told the story of a pet monkey gone rogue. Wealthy Victorians loved exotic pets, like bears, tigers, and kangaroos. And sometimes these exotic pets managed to escape. In 1870, an escaped monkey stole a baby from her sister's arms. Before they could do anything, the monkey ran onto a roof and escaped. Only after an entire day of searching was the monkey found in a local forest. Fortunately, he still had the baby with him. Another story from 1890 describes an international shipment of 19 tons of dead cats. The later years of Victorian Britain saw huge interest in occultism. Occultism comes from a Latin term that means knowledge of the paranormal. They would get together on dark nights and combine pseudoscience with paganistic rituals. One of the more interesting occultists was William Westcott, who founded the Golden Dawn Society. Golden Dawn was a secret society dedicated to studying the occult. They soon discovered a series of mysterious texts. The cipher manuscripts told of a series of rituals that could supposedly create a gateway to the spirit world, and so the Order attempted to perform each of these rituals. I assume none of them were successful, but Golden Dawn did become well established in British society, with several celebrity members. Their strength grew until Westcott left the organisation, after which they faded into obscurity. On a similar subject to the Golden Dawn, the Victorians loved ghost hunting. Scientific observation was the key word. They wanted to record personal experiences with ghosts and demons. The London Dialectical Society was founded in 1869 to do just that. They entered supposedly haunted houses from old legends during the winter. Their theory was that ghosts more commonly appear in cold weather. In 1871, they released a report claiming they encountered many spirits who warned them about the future, also that they were physically attacked by ghosts, and apparently they saw a bunch of witches summon an army of ghosts, which makes me wonder how scientific their methods were, because it doesn't sound scientific. One of the more well-known aspects of Victorian society was the widespread body snatching. Body snatching is the act of stealing dead bodies from graveyards, usually to be sold to medical schools. At the time, only the bodies of executed criminals were made available to medical students, so there weren't enough corpses to go around, which led to doctors buying them on the black market. The body snatchers would sneak into graveyards and exhume the bodies of dead people. This was such a big problem that watchtowers were installed in cemeteries, and metal caging was often laid over graves. Dead bodies would need to be physically watched over until they were buried, and violent mobs would attack anyone suspected of being a body snatcher. One of the most bizarre things about the Victorian era was the woman who gave it her name. So it's time for a list within a list. Here are 5 quick facts about Queen Victoria. She was only 5 feet tall. Victoria was her second name. She was Alexandrina Victoria. She was the first monarch to use a telephone. She was victim of the first ever celebrity stalker who stole her underwear. She was the first known case of a blood disorder called hemophilia.
Hey, is that trouble or not? They're not having trouble, are they?
I don't know. I ain't never seen anything like that.
That's trouble of some kind, George. That's trouble of some kind, isn't it, or not?